They thought I was alone. They were wrong. Hello, guys. Welcome back to Anna Thirstery, and thanks for all the love and support. A Cadillac blocked my gate, and my wife sat with her lover. Two thugs stepped out and said, "She's with Usno. We're here to break your ribs," smiled. It's her choice. Bring in them. Be careful now. Don't cry later. It was supposed to be a quiet Tuesday evening. It's the kind where the only thing on my mind was finishing the custom cabinet try project in my workshop. But as I pulled me truck toward the end of my long gravel driveway, a sleek jet black Cadillac Escalade was parked horizontally across the entrance, blocking the gate completely. I stepped out of my vehicle, my boots crunching on stone, and saw my wife Alina sitting in the passenger seat of the luxury SUV. She didn't look scared. She looked bored, checking her reflection in the sun visor mirror, while the man behind the wheel, a local debt collector named Silas, who I knew worked for Thucydides. Least reputable figures, tapped his fingers on the leather dash before I could even open my mouth to ask what was going on. The rear doors of the Cadillac swang open, and two massive men in matching tactical jackets stepped out, their faces set in the cold. Practice a grimace of professional Iantanator. Toters down her window. As Mag, cold expression crossing her faces, she looked at me like I was a piece off trash. She had finally finished bigging up. "I'm done with this simple life, Liam." She sneered, her voice dripping with a newfound arrogance that made my stomach turn. "Silas offers a lifestyle you couldn't provide in 3 lifetimes, so I'm taking my half off the estate now, whether you like eat or not." One of the thugs, a man with a jagged scar across his eyebrow, stepped forward and cracked his knuckles with a sound like dry branches breaking.
Yes.
"She's with us now, and we're here to make sure Rue don't make the divorce difficult. We're here to break your ribs and re-undo that. Some people are just too expensive for you to keep." I felt a strange, icy calm wash over me as I looked at the two men. Then back at the woman I had spent 12 years protecting, providing for, and loving. She thought she was trading up, bringing muscle to a domestic dispute to ensure I didn't fight back against her outrageous financial demands. But she had forgotten a very important detail about the Thebering man she was leaving. The 10 years I spent as a lead instructor for the state's elite tactical response unit before I retired to the quiet life of a carpenter. I didn't reach for a weapon and I didn't call for help. I simply shifted my weight and offered a small, terrifyingly steady smile that seemed to catch the thugs off guard. "It was her choice to leave," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "But bringing Themhar, that was your mistake." The man with the scar didn't wait for another word. He let out a guttural roar and charged toward me, his partner following close behind. With a heavy brass knuckle glinting in the fading sunlight, I expected a panicked husband to cower and beg for mercy. But as they closed the distance, I stepped into the path of thy first attacker, using his own momentum to redirect his weight toward the Craval. The air in the driveway was suddenly thick with the sound off scuffling feet and the sharp, sudden intake of breath as the reality of the situation began to shift. Lena's bored expression vanished in an instant, her eyes widening as she realized the simple. Carpenter was moving with a lethal, fluid grace she had never seen before. The first thug, the one with the scarred eyebrow, overcommit to a heavy right hook that was intended to end the fight before it started. But I wasn't where he expected me to be. I pivoted on my left heel, the gravel crunching beneath my boot as I caught. His wrist end used his own charging force to send him face first into the side of my Havidity pickup truck. The sound of his shed hitting the metal echoed through his driveway like a muffled gong, and Heckrumpaled to the ground, unconscious boffer he even knew what had hit him. His partner froze for a split second, the brass knuckles on his fists suddenly looking very small and insignificant, a man who moved like a shadow. Silas, watching from the safety of the Cadillac, finally stopped tapping his fingers, his face paling as he reached under the door handle to lock it. This stunned man, realizing he wasn't dealing with a civilian, tried to pull a collapsible baton from his belt, but I was already inside his guard. He delivered a sharp, focused palm strike his solar plexus, knocking the wind out of him in a ragged gasp that left him doubled over and gasping for air. I didn't give him a chance to recover. Swept his leg and pinned him to the ground, with a knee to the small of his back, my hand firmly on the back of his neck. "I told you," I whispered, my voice as calm as if I were giving instructions in the workshop. "It was a mistake to bring this to my house." The man groaned, his face pressed into the dirt. With leathy brass knuckles he had intended towels on my ribs clattered harmlessly on tath stones. Alina was no longer looking at her reflection. She was staring at me through the windshield, her mouth hanging open in a silent scream of disbelief. The man she had mocked for his simple life had just dismantled. 2 professional enforcers in under 30 seconds without breaking a sweat. Shaloot at Silas, expecting to do something to use the power and influence he had promised her. But Silas was busy shifting the Cadillac into reverse, high-size wide with a frantic need to escape a monster he had accidentally poked. He didn't care about Alina, or the half of the estate she had promised him. Hanley cared about the fact that he had just brought a knife to a gunfight, and the gun was currently looking directly at him. I stood up, leaving the second thought graveling in the dirt, and walked slowly toward the driver's side window off the Escalade. I didn't run and I didn't yell, the slow, deliberate pace, as my walk was far more terrifying than any outward display of anger. Silas fumbled with the gear shift, the engine roaring as he tried to back out onto the main road, but the gate was still partially closed and the heavy iron bar caught the rear bumper with a screech off tearing metal. I tapped on the reinforced glass of his window, the same steady smile still fixed on my face. "You're blocking my driveway, Silas," I said, my voice cutting through the sound of the struggling engine. "And I think it's time we discuss exactly how much this little visit is going to cost you." Silas looked like a man who had suddenly realized he was trapped in a cage with a predator he had mistaken for a house cat. His hand shaking so violently he could barely keep them on the steering wheel. He rolled the window down just an inch. The smell of burnt rubber and expensive leather wafting out into the evening air. "Look, man, this was all her idea," she told me. "You were just some woodworker who wouldn't put up a fight," he stammered, his eyes darting toward the 2 men, still groaning off gravel behind me. Lena, sitting beside him, finally snapped out of her trance, her face contorting with a mixture of rage and desperation. "Don't listen to him, Silas. You have a gun in the glove box. Use it," she screamed, her voice echoing off the trees and revealing the true depth of her malice. The silence that followed her scream was absolute, a cold vacuum that seemed to suck the warmth out of the twilight. Silas looked at the glove box, then back at me, and in that moment he saw the look in my eyes. The look of a man who had faced far worse than a panicked debt collector with a hidden weapon. I didn't move my hands from my sides, but the sheer weight of my presence seemed to open him to the seat. "Go ahead, Silas," I said, my voice low and dangerous smooth. "Open the box and see if your hands are fast enough to beat a decade of muscle memory. But before you do, remember that once that door opens, there's no going back to just being a guy who blocks driveways." Silas gulped, his hand moving away from the dashboard as if it were made of red-hot iron. Head turned to Alina, his expression shifting from fear to a cold, calculating dist. "You're crazy, lady. You didn't say anything about him being a ghost from the tactical units?" He hissed, reaching over and unbuckling her seatbelt with a sharp click that sounded like a final judgment. He then reached across her and pushed the passenger door open. "Get out, you're on your own." "I'm not dying for a divorce settlement, Elena's." Eyes went wide as she was literally pushed out of the idling Cadillac, her expensive heels catching on the gravel as she stumbled to the ground. Silas didn't wait for her to cover. Slammed the door, shut through the Escalade into a frantic 3-point turn that left deep ruts in me lawn and sped away, leaving a cloud of dust and the smell of defeat behind him. Alina sat in the dirt, the dust settling on her designer clothes as Shell looked up at me. The thugs she had hired were slowly picking themselves up, nursing broken ribs and bruised egos, as he limped toward the road. She was alone now, stripped of the muscle and the money she thought would protect her from the consequences of her choices. It stood over her, the shadows of the tall pines stretching across the driveway like the bars of a cell. She tried to muster one last look of defiance, but tears started to flow. Not out of regret for what she had done, but because she had finally realized Thatch had lost everything in a single 30-second span of time. "What are you going to do to me?" she whispered, her voice trembling in the cooling night air. I looked down at Alina, seeing noth woman I had once loved, but a stranger who had gambled her soul on Ashido and lost. The boring life she had despised was now the only thing standing between her and the cold reality of three worlds she had tried to join. "I'm not going to do anything to you, Alina," I said, my voice steady and devoid of the malice she expected.
Adam.
"Going to do exactly what you wanted? I'm going to give you your half of the estate, but since you decided to bring criminals Tummygate to threaten my life, you'll be receiving it through a court-appointed while you deal with the conspiracy charges I'm filing tonight. The confrontation didn't involve more violence or a grand display of power. It involved the quiet, unyielding weight off the law." I walked back to my truck and pulled out my phone. The dashcam having recorded every second of the assault, the threats, and Elena's scream for cells to use a weapon. She watched in stunned silence as I dialed the local sheriff. A man I had trained years ago and calmly explained the situation. "Tetwo. Thugs didn't even try to run. Then the area was remote and their employer had abandoned them. So they sat in the edge of the ditch, waiting forth flashing lights that would signal the end of their careers as enforcers. A year later, the gravel driveway Waskita again. The ruts from the Catalach had been filled, and a new reinforcedate stood at the entrance. Alina had been sentenced to a period of intensive probation and a hefty fine for her role line, the attempted assault.
Out.
She moved to the city living in a small apartment, far removed from luxury she had craved. While I stayed in the workshop, I found that Thawwood was easier to work with than people. It didn't lie. It didn't betray. It didn't bring hired muscle to my door to demand things it hadn't earned. I eventually finished the cabinetry project and even started teaching self-defense class for local residents, sharing the skills that had saved my life that Tuesday evening. I learned that peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the ability to handle it when it blocks your path. The woman sitting in that Cadillac had thought she was taking my future, but she ended up giving it back to me, stripped of Thales and the weight of a person who never truly belonged by my side. I am finally living the simple life I always wanted, and the only thing that ever blocks my gate now is the occasional wandering deer or the morning mist trolling off the hills. If your spouse brought dangerous people to your home to settle a score, would you try to forgiveth him for the sake of the past or ensureth he never had the chance to hurt Yahoo gain? I am curious, which part of Thekatry are you listening this story? Toned, did you know that nearly 80% of OR viewers haven't subscribed yet? If you enjoyed this 4-act story of a husband woe stood his ground, please hit that subscribe button. Check out our next video about a shocking Reddit cheating story where husband discovers the truth about his cheating wife.